Greetings. This is John Savers on World War II. My name is John Savers. I'm your host. And today we will continue with our look at this very important subject. Now, this is our second episode, and in continuation, let me say this much. The genesis of this program is the unending and self-serving usage of World War II by the establishment to advance its cause without telling the truth. We intend, therefore, to try to rectify this situation, to round out the picture, to educate. You will certainly not be educated by your high school teachers or by your colleges or universities, because they're going to give you the establishment point of view. And many of you may assume that such well-known historians as David Irving was proven to be incorrect by his court case in which he was a loser. But he was a loser not because of his historical information, but because the establishment is pan-European, pan-Atlantic, pan-Western, and the judge, someone named Gray, was as much in the pocket part of the establishment as anyone that you would find in the upper realms of our government. So it was a foregone conclusion that David Irving would lose. It is this process of trying to sort of petrify error as truth, immovable, unchangeable. We see the same thing with Nuremberg and so forth, where error can be declared unassailable, that it's right, proven, gives precedent, and there's no more room for discussion. This is typical of the establishment. We even saw a bit of that in regard to the murder of John F. Kennedy and others. It's hardly an unusual event. So, as explained in the initial program, we are going to try to present World War II in such a way as to round it out and to make the event less of a sort of cheering, we, wonderful, heroic, and so forth, but that it will be presented with warts, errors, so forth, and the enemy will not be declared demons. So that is the way we're going to present it. The Germans were kith and kin and deserve considerable respect, and they have not gotten it, but have been declared demons, and we think that this is a very odd event for people who consider themselves intellectual and anti-religious. But there you have it when it serves their purposes. We are going to go ahead then with the second part of our look at this interesting aspect of the German forces, how it came into being, why, and so forth. We have a guest to guide us, and let us therefore take another look at this particular force.
lorsque le 1er septembre
When on September 1st, 1939,
va éclater la guerre,
war erupts on the Polish frontier,
une révélation
an earth-shaking revelation
étourdissante va frapper
will astonish the world public.
Et c'est quoi?
And what is it?
C'est la révélation
It is the
d'une
revelation
forme de génie
of a
militaire
form of military genius
qui renouvelle complètement
that completely
la
transforms
stratégie et la
the
tactique
strategy and tactics of the past.
surgit un homme
Suddenly there surges forth a man
transformé
who will completely transform the military problem
à travers le monde,
across the world.
et cet homme, c'est Hitler.
And this man is Hitler,
Mais
and he transformed them.
il est arrivé à
He reached this result
avec une sûreté de lui-même
with a confidence in
absolument
himself
impressionnante.
that was absolutely astounding.
En fait, on admet ça.
And in fact,
Alors que
it
la
is admitted,
France a déclaré
although
la
it was
guerre,
France
c'est elle qui l'a déclaré,
who declared war,
c'est pas l'Allemagne.
for it is she who declared it, not
La
Germany.
France a déclaré la guerre
France declared
parce
war
que Hitler voulait retrouver
because Hitler wanted to
les
bring back
habitants
in
d'Annecy
the inhabitants of Danzig,
allemands dans leur quasi-totalité,
99%
qui
Germans,
depuis 21 ans attendaient à 2-3
who for 21 years had been waiting,
leur patrie.
200,000 to 300,000 persons, to rejoin their country.
Mais les
France had
Soviets
declared war over that,
se ruaient
but now the
dans une
Soviets
invasion
were rushing forth in a gigantic invasion from the east of Poland,
s'emparer de millions de personnes.
seizing millions of persons.
Enfin,
And
et
France
cet
did
homme
not
sincère,
react.
de
But
même,
basically, was she sincere or insincere?
si
From the
Hitler
English and French point of view,
touchait un petit bout de Pologne où étaient
if
les
Hitler was
Allemands,
guilty of touching a part of Poland populated by Germans,
il y a davantage en s'en prenant
Stalin was all the more so
personnes,
in grabbing
alors qu'il n'avait
millions of
provoqué
persons
rien,
when he
qu'il
had not
n'était
been
rien
provoked at
passé
all,
jusqu'alors.
and nothing had happened to justify the attack.
Et les Anglais n'ont pas
Well,
bougé.
The
Et les
English didn't make a
Français
move,
n'ont pas bougé. D'où
nor
l'on
did the
peut
French
déjà
make a move.
voir toute
From this one can see
de cette mise en
all
scène
the hypocrisy in their theatrical declaration of
qui a
war.
été voulu implacablement
This war was implacably wanted,
grossier.
was based on the crudest of
Et
lies.
quand le moment est venu de montrer ce
And
que
when the
pourrait
moment
être
comes
la foi,
to show
on
good
se
faith
défile.
to an ally,
Et d'ailleurs,
they
depuis le
back
premier
down.
jour,
and by the
Anglais
way,
et Français
from the very first day, the English and the French backed
la
down.
Pologne aura beau supplier
Poland
son aide.
can plead
Il
all she
faudra
wants
3 jours
for someone to come to her aid, but it will take 3 days of waiting
que l'Angleterre et puis,
for England,
traînée par elle, la France, déclare la
and
guerre.
then dragged along in her
Et
wake
à ce
France,
moment-là, il n'y a plus
just to
de
declare war.
et de corridors, je vous
Already
l'ai
at that
expliqué.
moment, there is no more Danzig or the Polish corridor. As I've explained to you, on the 3rd of September, it's already over. It makes no sense to make war.
Cette déclaration de guerre devait être une déclaration
But
de
this
rien du
declaration
tout,
of war
parce qu'il ne se passera
was obviously a
rien.
declaration of nothing at all, because nothing
Pendant
happened.
Ces 2 semaines de lutte désespérée
During these 2 weeks
de la Pologne,
of desperate struggle,
pas un
by
avion
Poland,
anglais n'apparaîtra
not
dans
one English plane
pas un,
will appear in the Polish sky. Not one.
pas un peloton français n'arrivera.
Not one
Par
French
air ou par
platoon
mer, rejoindre
will
les
arrive by air or sea.
Polonais. On les laissera
to join the Poles.
absolument seuls.
They are left absolutely
La France qui avait
alone.
signé quelques mois plus tôt
That
pour la
French,
plume de
which had
Gamelin,
pledged a few months earlier
que
with
dans
the
les
pen of
3
Gamelin
jours, elle serait
that
intervenue.
within 3 days,
Et puis,
she would
et que
intervene.
d'ailleurs, immédiatement,
and by the
à sa
way,
frontière,
that immediately,
elle agirait.
on her own
La
border,
France a eu
she would act.
une misérable opération
That
de
French launched
patrouille
only a miserable patrol operation
à la frontière
for a
d'Alsace,
few days
histoire de dire qu'elle
on the
avait un
Alsatian
peu
border,
bougé.
just to be able to
Rien
say
du
that
tout,
they
et
budged a
quand elle a
little,
vu que la Pologne
but
allait
really not
tomber,
much.
elle s'était retirée
And when she saw that Poland was going to succumb, she retreated immediately Thus zero help. Total abandonment of Poland. The Soviets are also now unpunished and in place, without its costing them one wounded or dead. They seize 100,000 square kilometers of a territory where they had no business, in total impunity. Silence. And Hitler himself, what will he do at this moment? Is he triumphant? Of course, for he has gained an extraordinary victory. And above all else, he has proved that he is militarily one of the greatest innovators in history. Since Napoleon, nothing had ever happened that even approached such an event. But his idea had stayed the same. He did not want war with Poland. He surely had not resolved to take such extreme measures till he was brought to the end of his patience by the Polish massacres of Germans and the bad faith of the Allies. And even when all was virtually lost for the cause of peace, even at the moment when the attack was set to start, up until the last second, he had made desperate attempts to avoid its coming to a fight. The history of the Swede Dolorous was striking. Dolorous was a neutral, a very powerful Swedish industrialist, a friend of Goering, and who had important relations with England. Well, in the last week before the war erupted, there was a series of comings and goings, really amazing, by Dolorous, trying despite everything to convince the English that they should still be talking and trying to save the situation. And Dolorous had seen Chamberlain. He had seen Halifax. He'd seen all the important people in Great Britain. And he had failed. All his efforts had been in vain. Zero. He had not succeeded in getting the idea of a rapprochement accepted in any way, shape, or form. Already the English had long established that there was a total incompatibility between a British Empire, which wanted to dominate the world, and a Third Reich, which was trying to set itself up solidly just in Europe. And even Mussolini, who, however, had dropped his support of Hitler, not wishing to run too many risks, over the course of the last week, even Mussolini, having seen that war was really erupting, had tried desperately for 3 days to still entreat the English. And the French jumped at the chance for peace. They had wanted to come to terms, because it was they who were risking all. The English were risking nothing, at least nothing in the short term. In case of conflict, if the French kept their word, it would be they who would very quickly have thousands and thousands of dead. Well, the French, yes, declared themselves ready to talk. But the English remained inflexible. They sent Mussolini to the devil. They did not wish to have any meeting to seek an arrangement. Thus it was that Hitler, despite himself, had had to go beyond mere preparations for war. He had had to finally resolve himself to take back what was being refused him and which should have been returned to Germany 20 years before. regions like Danzig.
Parce que c'est ce qu'on vient
But
toujours
what do they
dire.
always say?
Mais c'est Hitler qui est en
But it's Hitler who started the war. But no,
C'est
it was the unrelenting desire
des signataires
of
de
the
Versailles
signatories of the Treaty of Versailles to maintain their domination,
qui a poussé l'Allemagne
which pushed Germany
à cette
to these actions.
Ce sont les Alliés qui,
It was the Allies who 2 or 3 years after Versailles
Versailles aurait dû dire, mais c'est insensé,
should have honestly said to themselves, but it's quite insane
on ne peut pas
what
nier
we are doing here.
le droit
We cannot
disponible
deny to the
comme
peoples the
nous l'avons
right of
fait à
self-determination, as we just did at Versailles, but we lost our heads. We need to make amends.
Eh bien, pendant 21 ans, on avait
But for
fait
21
ça.
years, they had maintained this system.
Plus de 10 millions d'êtres
More than
humains
10 million human beings, 12 million human beings,
avaient été soumis à des
had been
dictatures
subjected to
étrangères.
foreign dictatorships.
Les Tchèques avaient
The
écrasé
Czechs
les
had crushed the Sudets.
Les Polonais avaient
The
écrasé
Poles had
les
crushed the
Allemands
Germans of
de
Silesia.
et les Allemands de Danzig et du
And what about the
Corridor.
Germans of Danzig and the Polish corridor?
Jamais un règlement n'avait été
No settlement was ever possible,
que tout
although everything
venait
had
de réaliser
dictated
depuis bien
they
longtemps.
did do so for a long time.
Et c'est pour ça qu'Hitler,
It was for this reason that Hitler, having won,
n'avait que des idées.
had only one desire,
C'est que cette victoire
that this
soit courte
episode
et
be
qu'on s'arrête.
brief and that the settlement be reached.
Et à peine la campagne de Pologne
Hardly is the campaign in Poland terminated,
Hitler réunit les députés
then Hitler convokes the deputies of Germany to the Reichstag
le 6
on the
octobre.
6th of October.
Il n'y a donc pas exactement
It is almost exactly
5 semaines
5 weeks
que les hostilités ont commencé.
since hostilities had
Elles sont
commenced.
terminées.
They are now concluded.
Hitler
Hitler
s'adresse à son peuple, au
addresses his
Reichstag,
people at the Reichstag itself
proposer
to
publiquement,
publicly
sans
propose,
détour,
without
la paix
further
aux
ado, peace to his adversaries.
Les textes sont là.
The texts are there.
C'est absolument indéniable.
It is absolutely undeniable.
Le 6 octobre,
The 6th of October 1939,
la possibilité
the possibility
existait de
existed
nouveau
to again
de
take up the
reprendre
Polish
le
problem,
problème polonais pour lui trouver,
to find a solution for it.
certes, qui ne correspondrait plus à un
Certainly
passé
not
récent,
one which corresponded to the recent
qui
past,
correspondrait
but one which
à la
corresponded
justice élémentaire
to elementary justice, to the rights of the peoples, and to the simple exercise of democracy.
démocratie. Parce qu'enfin, c'est ça la démocratie.
Because ultimately, this is what democracy is, that the people decide on their destiny,
Et non pas quelques politiciens dans des
and not
bureaux
some
inconnus.
politicians in their unknown offices, or in offices where one does not know from the outside what is going on within.
Or, cela avait été ça l'avant-guerre.
But that is how it was before the war.
L'avant-guerre a été
Pre-war period
préparée,
had been
menée,
prepared,
décidée par une poignée
conducted,
de politiciens
and decided
anglais,
by a handful of English, French, and Jewish warmongers.
Elle a été déclarée par une
War was declared by a
qui n'avait même
France
pas reçu le consentement du
which had not
Parlement
even obtained the
français.
consent of the French
Là
Parliament.
aussi, on était en pleine
There again, they behaved as a complete anti-democracy.
Alors enfin, on pouvait y revenir.
Well, now there was a chance to change course.
Résultat de ce discours,
The result of Hitler's speech?
évidemment, pendant quelques heures, une grande
Of course,
illusion
for a few hours, a grand illusion existed among the millions, the tens of millions of Germans who listened to the Führer.
Tous se disaient, ça y est, c'est
Everyone said to himself, there it is,
fini. On va
it's
rentrer
over.
dans ces maisons.
The boys will come home,
Les soldats vont rentrer
And
dans
the
les fermes
soldiers
pour terminer les
will
récoltes.
return to their farms to finish the harvest.
Chez les Français, au fond,
With the French, basically,
la mentalité était assez
the mentality
similaire.
was fairly similar.
On n'avait pas pris au sérieux le début
The start of the
ni d'un
so-called
côté
war
ni de l'autre, à la
had
frontière
not been taken seriously, neither by one side nor by the other, at the French border,
derrière la ligne Maginot,
along the
on
Maginot
avait
Line, and behind the Maginot Line.
comme des légumes
They had
pressés,
boasted of the
5
fact
millions
that they
de
had
soldats
5
mobilisés.
million soldiers already mobilized. But nothing
Et
was
du
happening.
côté allemand,
And on the German side, it was evident that Hitler had not believed it either. The proof? He had all in all along the German frontier with the West. No more than 40 divisions. And even those were divisions of second-rate troops who were not even equipped up to date. And at that moment, those 40 divisions did not represent more than 500,000 or 600,000 men, while the French troops were 5 million men. If the French had but wanted, the German troops could never have resisted. They would have had to fall back. They would have had to fall very far back. On the other hand, Hitler was not afraid of a French attack if they had fallen back, since he was certain he would win a victory in Poland in a very short time. He would be able to bring his victorious troops back to confront the French who were trying to invade his soil. But the problem did not even present itself. The French did not budge, and the Germans had not budged. Between the Maginot Line and the Siegfried Line, well, like dumb farm animals, they just looked at each other while wondering what would happen next. So what did happen? Nothing happened at all. A few patrols, a few isolated rifle shots, a handful of soldiers bumping into each other on one side or the other of the border, and the certitude that things could stay this way for a long time. By the way, this is what was called the phony war. It seemed so phony that they immediately gave it that moniker. So the only ones who had really immediately opposed a settlement were the English. Always the same thing. For them it was inadmissible that any one particular country in Europe should become strong. They had supposedly made war for Poland, but then they let Poland croak without reacting. It was a bad joke, smoke and mirrors. The truth was the fact that a man of great standing had become head of the German people and had made a powerful nation of them. And what they reproached him for was not having done it, but having done it for Germany. It was Churchill himself who, full of admiration for Hitler, had but one regret, that Hitler was not English. If he had been English, well, that would have been very fine. But the fact is that he was not, and that was the crime. And so we see this peace proposal. It is properly delivered, formal, and public. Rejected. Nevertheless, others insist. The Pope insists. He brings it up again and again for weeks. Then we see even the King of Belgium with the Queen of Holland on November 6th, making a major appeal to the belligerents to start talking among themselves and find an arrangement. And that, by the way, is bizarre, because the King of the Belgians does so without even speaking of it to his government. But the text is there. The German proposal, once launched, is approved by all the neutral countries. But the impenetrable English do not unclench their teeth. It is then, several days later, that an event took place that should have made the world think. It was the reappearance of Stalin with respect to Finland. He has hardly finished devouring his third of Poland, which did not cost him anything, when he now addresses himself to the Finns to demand concessions of Finnish territories throughout the Gulf of Finland. Stupefaction The Finns, naturally, are not at all disposed to also cede for no good reason, and even without a fight, a portion of their territory. But Stalin, from the beginning, has shown bad faith. Even before the war with Poland erupted, he had 250,000 men at the Polish frontier. He had given the order to withdraw them, so that Poland could concentrate all their troops at the German border. This in itself was an act of astonishing disloyalty for an ally of Germany. Thus, it's obvious he wanted the conflict to stretch out as long as possible, that the Poles resist Germany more effectively, and for the French and English to have time to intervene in turn in the fight. In fact, this has always been Stalin's plan. And there, one cannot say that he was a hypocrite. It was always clear with him what Stalin wanted, like Lenin before him, was world revolution.